The bustling corporate office hummed with activity as Sarah adjusted her blazer, stepping out of the elevator onto the 23rd floor. With 2 marketing degrees and 5 years of experience under her belt, this was supposed to be her moment, her first day as senior marketing manager. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, but the warmth didn't quite reach her heart as she recalled her mother's words. "Baby, you'll have to work twice as hard to get half as far." Little did she know how prophetic those words would prove to be. The first few hours went smoothly, meeting her team, setting up her workspace, and reviewing upcoming projects. But everything changed during the afternoon staff meeting. Her new boss, Mr. Richardson, a man who'd climbed the corporate ladder in half the time it took others, sat at the head of the conference table, his expensive watch glinting under the fluorescent lights. As Sarah confidently presented her innovative ideas for the company's new social media campaign, she noticed Mr. Richardson's smirk growing wider. When she finished, instead of offering constructive feedback, he leaned back in his leather chair and said, "Well, well, quite impressive for someone of your background. Did you learn all that from watching TikTok videos?" The room fell silent. Several colleagues shifted uncomfortably in their seats, while others suddenly became very interested in their notepads. Sarah felt her chest tighten, but years of dealing with microaggressions had prepared her for this moment. She maintained her professional composure, even as her fingers gripped the presentation pointer a little tighter. What happened next would become the talk of the office for months to come. Sarah's response wasn't just clever. It was a masterclass in handling workplace discrimination with grace and intelligence. But more importantly, it was about to change the power dynamic in that conference room forever. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife as Sarah took a deep breath. 20 pairs of eyes darted between her and Mr. Richardson, waiting to see how this would unfold. She had 2 choices. She could either let this moment break her, or she could use it to break through the invisible barriers that had held back too many for too long. "Actually, Mr. Richardson," Sarah began, her voice steady and clear, carrying across the suddenly silent conference room. The words that followed would not only challenge his prejudiced assumptions, but would also expose something about the company's recent performance that no one had dared to mention, something that would make every board member sit up and take notice. Mr. Richardson's smirk began to fade as Sarah pulled up a series of graphs on the presentation screen. The data she was about to reveal would shake the foundation of his carefully constructed facade of superiority. But this wasn't just about proving him wrong. It was about standing up for every person who'd ever been judged by the color of their skin rather than the content of their character. As Sarah prepared to deliver her response, she thought about all the young professionals who would come after her, all the doors that needed to be opened, all the minds that needed to be changed. This wasn't just about one racist comment in one conference room. It was about changing the narrative, one powerful moment at a time. The next few minutes would not only transform Sarah's career, but would set in motion a chain of events that would reshape the entire company culture. But first, she had to deliver the comeback that would leave everyone in that room questioning everything they thought they knew about leadership, respect, and the true meaning of professional excellence. Sarah toggled to the next slide, revealing a comprehensive analysis of the company's social media engagement over the past year. "While you were busy making assumptions about TikTok, Mr. Richardson, I was actually studying our competitor's digital footprint. Let me show you something interesting." Her finger traced across a downward trending line on the graph. "Our engagement rates have dropped 40% in the demographic we need most, young professionals aged 25 to 34, the very audience you've been dismissing as not our target market." The room grew even quieter as Sarah clicked through slides showing missed opportunities and declining market share. Mr. Richardson's face flushed red as she methodically dismantled his entire marketing strategy, not with anger or spite, but with cold, hard facts. Several board members leaned forward, their expressions shifting from discomfort to intense interest. Sarah had done her homework, weeks of research before even stepping foot in the building. "And here's the most fascinating part," she continued, pulling up a split-screen comparison. "Our main competitor hired a diverse marketing team last year. Their campaigns speak to a broader audience, and their revenue has increased by 32%. She paused, letting the numbers sink in. It turns out, Mr. Richardson, that understanding different perspectives isn't just about being inclusive. It's about staying profitable. The CFO, Mrs. Chen, who had been quietly observing from the corner, suddenly spoke up. These numbers, are they verified? Sarah nodded, sharing the sources of her data. Every single one, ma'am. I can provide the full report after the meeting. Mr. Richardson attempted to regain control of the room. This is all very interesting, but we've always done things a certain way here. But before he could finish, Sarah smoothly interjected with another revelation that made several people gasp audibly. She unveiled internal survey results showing that the company had lost several major clients specifically because their marketing failed to resonate with diverse audiences. The data was there all along, buried in exit interviews and customer feedback forms that nobody had bothered to analyze properly. As Sarah continued her presentation, a subtle shift occurred in the room. Junior employees who had been avoiding eye contact began sitting up straighter. The woman from accounting who had been nervously clicking her pen stopped and started taking notes. Even the usually disengaged VP of operations was fully focused on every word. But it wasn't just about the numbers. Sarah began sharing stories, real feedback from real customers who felt overlooked and undervalued by the company's current marketing approach. Each testimony resonated with truth and urgency, painting a picture of countless missed opportunities. Mr. Richardson's earlier smirk had completely vanished, replaced by an expression that wavered between anger and fear. He knew, as did everyone else in the room, that Sarah wasn't just defending herself. She was exposing a fundamental flaw in the company's entire approach to business. As she prepared to reveal her next piece of evidence, a document she had discovered buried in the company's archives, the tension in the room reached a fever pitch. This wasn't just about one racist comment anymore. It was about to become a moment of reckoning for the entire organization. The senior executives exchanged meaningful glances as Sarah pulled up the final slide. What she was about to share would force everyone in that room to confront not just Mr. Richardson's prejudice, but their own complicity in maintaining a system that had been holding the company back for years. Sarah took another deep breath, her hand steady as she reached for the remote to advance to the next slide. The information she was about to share would either make or break her career, and possibly transform the company forever. The next slide displayed a confidential email thread from 6 months ago, one that Mr. Richardson had clearly forgotten about. Sarah had discovered it while doing her pre-employment research, buried in a public shareholder report. The email detailed Mr. Richardson explicitly rejecting a highly qualified marketing team's proposal simply because he felt they didn't fit the company image. This proposal, Sarah explained, her voice unwavering, would have secured the Miller account, the same account our competitors landed last quarter, worth $12 million in annual revenue. She let that number hang in the air for a moment. Several board members straightened in their chairs, their expressions darkening as they processed the implications. Mr. Richardson's face had turned from red to ashen. He reached for his water glass, his hand trembling slightly as he took a sip. The CFO, Mrs. Chen, was now furiously taking notes, her lips pressed into a thin line. The weight of lost opportunities and misguided decisions filled the room like a heavy fog. But Sarah wasn't finished. She pulled up another screen showing a series of social media analytics. These patterns show something even more concerning, she continued. The data revealed how their competitors were dominating emerging markets while their company remained stagnant, clinging to outdated perspectives and missing crucial cultural shifts. Just then, Sarah noticed movement at the conference room door. Through the glass walls, she could see several people gathering. Word had spread about what was happening in this meeting. Among them was James from IT, who had been passed over for promotion 3 times despite his innovative solutions. There was Diana from customer service, whose suggestions for reaching Spanish-speaking markets had been repeatedly ignored. Mr. Richardson must have noticed them too because he suddenly attempted to stand, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. I think we've heard enough, he began, but Mrs. Chen raised her hand, silencing him. Please continue, Sarah, she said, her tone carrying an authority that made Mr. Richardson slowly sink back into his seat. Sarah clicked to the next slide, revealing something that made several people audibly gasp. It was a compilation of employee satisfaction surveys from the past year, showing a disturbing pattern of ignored complaints and missed opportunities. But more than that, it showed the direct correlation between diversity in decision-making positions and company growth across their industry. The room temperature seemed to drop several degrees as Sarah prepared to reveal her final piece of evidence. This wasn't just about one racist comment anymore. It was about to expose years of systematic suppression of talent and innovation. She could feel her heart pounding, but her voice remained steady. As she reached for the remote one last time, Mr. Richardson suddenly stood up, his chair toppling backward. The look in his eyes was a mixture of fury and fear, the desperate expression of someone watching their carefully constructed world crumble. But before he could speak, before he could try to dismiss or diminish what was happening, Sarah's finger pressed the button to advance to the final slide. The screen flickered for a moment, and in that brief pause, the entire room held its breath. What appeared next would not only change the trajectory of Sarah's career, but would send shockwaves through the entire corporate structure. The evidence she was about to present would make it impossible for anyone in that room to look away or pretend they didn't know. The final slide appeared, revealing a split-screen presentation. On the left was Mr. Richardson's glossy annual report to shareholders, boasting of record profits and innovative leadership. On the right were the real numbers, carefully hidden in subsidiary reports and buried in financial footnotes, showing the company bleeding market share in every diverse market segment they'd ignored. But then something unexpected happened. The door to the conference room swung open, and in walked Catherine Williams, the company's founder and former CEO, who had supposedly retired 3 years ago. Her presence commanded immediate attention, her silver hair and sharp suit a reminder of the days when the company had been at its most innovative. "I've been watching this presentation remotely," Catherine announced, her voice carrying decades of authority. "Mrs. Chen kept me informed about certain concerns." She moved to the front of the room, standing beside Sarah. The younger woman felt her heart skip a beat. Catherine Williams was a legend in the industry, known for breaking glass ceilings in the 1990s. Mr. Richardson's face cycled through several emotions: shock, fear, and finally, a desperate attempt at composure. "Catherine, this is hardly necessary," he began, but she cut him off with a raised hand. "When I handed over this company to you, Robert, it was with the understanding that you would lead it into the future, not drag it into the past." Sarah watched as Catherine turned to the screen, studying the numbers she had presented. "But what's truly shocking," Catherine continued, "isn't just these numbers." She pulled out her tablet and with a few taps, shared a new document to the main screen. "It's this." The new document showed something even more damning: a pattern of systematic suppression of diverse voices within the company, all traced back to policy changes made under Mr. Richardson's leadership. But more than that, it revealed a connection to their biggest competitor that no one had suspected. The room erupted in murmurs as people began to connect the dots. Sarah herself felt her breath catch as she realized the full implications of what she was seeing. The competitor's sudden success wasn't just about their inclusive marketing strategy. They had been systematically recruiting the talented individuals that Mr. Richardson had driven away. Mr. Richardson suddenly found his voice. "This is ridiculous. You can't possibly." But Catherine wasn't finished. She nodded to Mrs. Chen, who stood and revealed another shocking piece of information that made Mr. Richardson fall silent mid-sentence. The tension in the room was now thick enough to cut with a knife. Sarah watched as years of carefully constructed prejudice and privilege began to crumble. But even she wasn't prepared for what Catherine said next. The words that followed would not only vindicate every person who had ever been marginalized in this company, but would set in motion a chain of events that would reshape the entire industry. As Catherine prepared to speak, Sarah noticed something else. Through the glass walls, the crowd of employees had grown larger. Word had spread throughout the building about what was happening in this conference room. Dozens of faces pressed against the glass, witnessing what was quickly becoming a historic moment in the company's history. Mr. Richardson, now visibly sweating, reached for his phone, but Mrs. Chen smoothly intercepted. "I don't think we'll be needing any outside calls right now," she said firmly. The next few minutes would determine not just the fate of the company, but the future of workplace equality in their entire industry. Catherine turned to Sarah, a slight smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "Now," she said, her voice carrying years of hard-won wisdom, "show them what you found in the offshore accounts." And with those words, the room erupted into chaos. Sarah's fingers moved swiftly across her tablet, pulling up a series of encrypted documents. The offshore accounts revealed something far more sinister than simple discrimination. Mr. Richardson had been deliberately sabotaging diverse-led initiatives while secretly investing in their competitors. Every rejected proposal, every dismissed innovation had been carefully calculated to weaken the company while strengthening his personal portfolio. For 3 years, Catherine explained, her voice cutting through the chaos, Mr. Richardson has been orchestrating the largest corporate sabotage scheme I've ever seen. But he made one critical mistake. She turned to Sarah with a knowing look. He underestimated the very people he was trying to suppress. Mrs. Chen stepped forward, adding her voice to the revelation. "We've been building this case for months, waiting for someone brave enough to stand up and spark the change." Sarah didn't just expose discrimination today. She unknowingly became the final piece in a much larger puzzle. Mr. Richardson lunged for the door, but security was already there. As they escorted him out, he shouted empty threats about lawyers and retaliation. But his words fell flat against the weight of evidence displayed on the screen, evidence that would soon be in the hands of the SEC. Catherine turned to address the room, now packed with employees who had filtered in during the chaos. "Today marks a new chapter for this company. But first, there's one more thing everyone needs to know." She nodded to Sarah, giving her the floor one final time. Sarah took a deep breath and revealed the last piece of information, a comprehensive plan for corporate restructuring that she had developed during her research. It wasn't just about removing toxic leadership. It was about rebuilding the company's foundation with diversity and innovation at its core. This plan, Sarah explained, her confidence growing with each word, will not only recover our lost market share, but will position us as industry leaders in corporate equality and innovation. The slides showed projected growth charts that made even the most skeptical board members lean forward with interest. But the real surprise came when Catherine revealed the final twist. "The board has already voted," she announced, glancing at her watch with a slight smile. "As of 10 minutes ago, we've approved an emergency restructuring. Sarah, we're not just implementing your plan. We want you to lead it. Effective immediately, you're our new Chief Innovation Officer." The room erupted in applause, but Sarah wasn't finished. She had one more card to play, a partnership proposal that would bring back the top talent they'd lost stronger than ever. As she outlined her vision, she could see hope and excitement replacing the fear and tension that had dominated the company for so long. Mrs. Chen stood up, adding her voice to the momentum. "We're not just changing leadership. We're changing our entire corporate culture. And we're starting with full back pay and promotions for every employee whose growth was stunted under the old regime." The energy in the room was electric as years of suppressed talent and innovation suddenly found its voice. But it was the final announcement that left everyone speechless. Catherine revealed that the company would be establishing a multi-million-dollar fund for minority entrepreneurship, named in honor of Sarah's mother's words, the Twice-as-Hard Scholarship Fund. As the room filled with tears, cheers, and hugs, Sarah felt a tap on her shoulder. It was Diana from customer service, holding up her phone. "You need to see this," she said, her voice trembling with excitement. The company's stock was soaring as news of the leadership change leaked to the market. Investors were already recognizing what Mr. Richardson had failed to see, that true innovation comes from embracing every voice. Sarah looked around the room at her colleagues, no, her team, and saw the future taking shape. The barriers hadn't just been broken, they had been transformed into stepping stones for generations to come. In the weeks that followed, the company underwent a remarkable transformation. Sarah's first act as Chief Innovation Officer was to implement a comprehensive review of all previously rejected proposals. Diana's Spanish market initiative was fast-tracked and launched within a month, immediately capturing a previously untapped demographic. James from it finally saw his cybersecurity innovations rolled out company-wide, dramatically improving their digital infrastructure. The Twice as Hard Scholarship Fund gained national attention, attracting partnership offers from major tech companies and educational institutions. Sarah made sure the application process was transparent and accessible, remembering her own struggles breaking into the corporate world. Within 6 months, the fund had already helped 50 promising students secure internships and educational opportunities. Mr. Richardson's legal team attempted to fight back, but the evidence was insurmountable. The SEC investigation revealed even deeper levels of corruption than initially suspected. As news spread throughout the industry, other companies began examining their own practices, leading to a wave of corporate culture reforms across the sector. Perhaps the most surprising development came 3 months after that fateful meeting. Several former employees who had left under Mr. Richardson's leadership returned, bringing with them years of experience and innovation from their time with competitors. The company didn't just recover its lost market share, it exceeded all previous benchmarks, setting new standards for both profitability and workplace equality. Sarah kept her mother's words framed on her new office wall, but with an addition underneath: work twice as hard, get twice as far, then hold the door open for others. She made it her mission to mentor young professionals, especially those facing similar barriers she had encountered. The company's internship program, once an exclusive club, became known as one of the most diverse and competitive in the industry. Catherine, though officially retired, remained involved as an advisor to the board. She often reminded people that true leadership isn't about maintaining power, it's about empowering others. The company's annual report that year featured a group photo of all employees, representing every level of the organization, with the simple caption, "Innovation knows no boundaries." 1 year to the day after that transformative meeting, Sarah stood in the same conference room, now addressing a new generation of leaders. The room had been renamed the Progress Room, and its walls were lined with photographs documenting the company's journey toward inclusive excellence. As she looked out at the eager faces before her, she saw not just employees, but pioneers of change. Success isn't just about breaking through barriers, she told them, her voice carrying the wisdom of experience. It's about making sure those barriers never stand in anyone else's way again. The company's stock had tripled, their market influence had expanded, and most importantly, they had created a blueprint for corporate culture that other companies were rushing to emulate. As Sarah concluded her presentation, she glanced at her phone and smiled. Her mother had just texted her about another successful scholarship recipient, a young woman who reminded them both of Sarah just a few years ago. The cycle of change was continuing, growing stronger with each passing day. The conference room that had once witnessed discrimination now stood as a symbol of transformation, its glass walls reflecting a future where talent and innovation flourish regardless of background. And somewhere, in another corporate office, another Sarah was gathering her courage, ready to stand up and make her voice heard. The door was open, and the path forward was clear.